You're watching Notepad. My name is Ibrahim Sani. Today we shall explore the business of education. We're in August, and in just a few weeks, the private school institutions all around the country, as well as in the region, will commence. Because of the COVID-19 situation, the environment is actually quite dire for both the business as well as parents sending their kids to private schools. That's why we want to have this conversation. Joining me in the studio is Alister Bartholomew, the Regional Director of Beaconhouse, Southeast Asia, here to discuss the business of education, not just in Malaysia, but perhaps in the region as well. Welcome to the show, Alister.
Thank you for having me.
Let's talk a little bit about Beaconhouse. What's it all about?
Well, Beaconhouse is a big group. In fact, in some areas it would consider to be the biggest schools group in the world of its kind. It's certainly the second. And we operate across 8 countries, and we educate 310,000 children. So it's a big group, and here in Malaysia we are represented in 14 schools, and in Thailand we have another 4, and in Philippines another 2, 4 if you look at it in primary and secondary.
All right, let's talk also about the curriculum. You guys offer IGCSE, IB, do you think that this is still an appeal for parents across the region?
Yes, I think it is. I think the English national curriculum, or the various components of it that we offer, I think is very attractive to parents. They see a continuity element to it, I think, which has a sort of an end goal, if you like, in terms of giving options to young people. So I think we are very popular. And I think people see the scope in it, the limitations perhaps that some people have seen, sadly, with the government system here in Malaysia, I think drives people towards what I would consider to be a mid-market approach, which is where we are. And it has proved to be very popular, yeah.
The K-12 education that you guys are doing, sometimes your competitors are also doing pre-university, universities or university colleges. Has Beaconhouse ventured into that area?
Well, we've only gone as far as GCSE, IGCSE so far, but part of my appointment from January this year is to try and expand our scope, I think, in terms of what we're going to do. So I hope that I'm going to take certainly our 2 international schools into an A-level program within the next year or so. And I think it'll be important because I think one thing that perhaps this current pandemic has shown us is that the discipline of education, the need for discipline within education and focus is very important. So what we would be offering post-GCSE, if you like, would be a very traditional element of taking children through a 2-year A-level course to give them full opportunities to all universities, whereas sometimes the foundation scheme and the 1-year course, yeah, parents save fees, but they're going to have limited options globally.
Actually, parents are saving fees like anything. Prior to starting this show, I was having a quick chat with you. I was talking about the fact that I literally just paid my school fees for my kids. The school was actually quite perplexed because I was paying the fees so early, at least for this year. But, it's normal for parents to pay fees in early August. This is because, we have 3 or 4 more weeks before the school starts. But this is emblematic of the situation of COVID-19. Has enrollment been down for your school, at least for this coming academic year?
Yes, it has, and you would also be very popular with us if you were stacking up to pay your fees as well. A lot of parents have struggled, and they are struggling. I meet a lot of parents in the regional office who want to talk to me personally about their own particular problems. But yes, we have had falling rolls. We've lost about 150 children, I think, since the beginning of the pandemic in late March.
Out of?
Well, we're about 2,500 children.
So optimally, 5% or
yes,
even 10%.
Yeah. Optimally, we want to be bigger than that. But we have lost about 150. I'll be very honest with you, I think Beaconhouse has done better than some. And I would like to think that that's representative of the fact that we have actually stepped up during the pandemic time with a pretty decent online program that parents actually largely believed in. But this is a game changer for education globally. It's a game changer in Malaysia and our 2 other countries where I operate in Philippines and in Thailand too. So things will never, ever, I'm afraid, be quite the same.
I can't imagine it being the same because the situation on the vaccine discovery process is slow, and even if there's a vaccine, we did a quick straw poll here in AWANI on our social media platforms. Everybody wants the vaccine. Nobody wants to be the guinea pig to test the vaccines out prior to getting some sort of an FDA approval. So it's like, you want public transportation, you don't want it at the back of your house. It's the same situation everywhere else. Now, there is an element of kids staying at home for far too long. I mean, speaking out of experience here, my kids are now bored of playing with their iPads and YouTube and TikTok. They now want to read books, not because of their desire and love for reading books, but because they're bored out of their minds. And if you think about it, early March or mid-March, we started the MCO. And if they do go to school on the 2nd of September or the 3rd of September, we're looking at them being at home for 7 months. And that's not healthy, at least for the development of a child. And I have a 13-year-old child. She is going through, pre-teen years, which is also quite difficult for one to, experience. But the thing is, she is independent. I mean, you expect that out of a 13-year-old child. When there's syllabus given to her, she can complete it. And if she can't complete it, the teacher will alert us, the parents, my wife and I, and we'll be able to, mess around with her situation, and perhaps she can actually get it done. But I have 2 young children as well, 6 and 8. They need all the coaching that they can get because they can't even punch in their login username and ID and password, right? But I don't see this going to improve anytime soon, at least for the public sphere, the private school sphere. What would be some of the views that you have on this prolonged online education at home?
Well, apart from the obvious academic concerns that we have about lack of progress with children in this online atmosphere, it is the welfare, it's the social mental health of children during this time, which is paramount in my view, because I've been in this game for 40 plus years, both as teacher, head, chairman of governors, call it what you will, CEO of a number of schools groups. And I love children, and that's why I'm in this world. And I think my greatest concerns is what it has done to them in terms of their deprivation. Some of them have struggled a lot. We had a very interesting online conference recently for Beaconhouse across our whole group, and in fact globally, called the School of Tomorrow. And I had the privilege of being hosting 4 young people, 2 from our country, 2 from our schools, 1 from Sharjah, another one from Pakistan. And they were telling us on that program, these young people, about their experiences and the sense of deprivation, the lack of access, the lack of peer group interaction, how they felt about their teachers, how they felt their teachers had coped, how they had coped. And it was fascinating listening to their background and their worries and their concerns for the future.
What would be some of their concerns? What would be the...
Well, I think that some of them had felt very, very isolated, and they had seen online changes in their friends. They'd seen online changes with their teacher. Their interaction wasn't as good. Some of them had become quite reclusive. Some had become very introspective, had lost perhaps some of their buzz, had lost some of their sort of spontaneity, if you like. Others had coped actually rather well. The more bookish, the more studious types had actually reacted to this online in a rather studious and rather sort of focused way. And it was very interesting, and that is actually the same with teachers as well. We've had teachers who have been remarkable in the classroom, who haven't been able to do this online very well at all.
Yeah.
Stage fright, can't do it. Others, who've perhaps been fairly average, have been winning a Golden Globe Award every morning as they come on online, and have really been enjoying themselves and really playing to the audience. And it's the same really for very young children. We go right the way down to 2-year-olds. As old as I look, I have 2 little boys, and one of them, my youngest, is 2, and my other one is nearly 4. And they have been having online, and I would watch them. It's very interesting because I've been looking at a lot of lessons online. My 2-year-old perhaps comes in front of the laptop, waves at his friends, and he's gone.
Yeah, of course.
Same with the 3.5-year-old.
Yeah.
But the teacher continues at least for another hour dancing and singing and reading poems, and so nobody's listening, or very few listening, but she's doing her stuff and so on like that. But I think parents have really appreciated it, because for the first time ever, parents have actually begun to realize what teachers do and how they do it.
Definitely.
That's been both good and bad. We've had some criticism. Perhaps technically it hasn't worked, maybe online hasn't been as efficient as it should be, internet connections, all those sorts of things. But I think they've realized, in many cases for the first time, what a tough job this can be, and the challenges of teachers dealing with so many children. So we've had a lot of compliments and a lot of very positive statements from parents who believe that Beaconhouse have actually done pretty well across the board. I mean, when this first started, if you remember, a lot of people were stuck in their kampangs, villages all over the place when it was declared. So in the first week or two, we had some of our poor teachers desperately trying to deliver what they were doing on their handphones, 4G, if they were lucky, and trying to do that. And also some of our students there as well. So it was a bit of a mess, to be honest, for the first few weeks as we settled in. And we didn't really have any time to prepare for this. Now, I am a long-term teacher. I've been doing it most of my life. And none of us were trained to do this. Even where teacher training in the UK, which is pretty strong, none of us were trained to do this.
People would think that, and these are the same people that wouldn't have children, I suppose, would think that this is the same because you're just teaching, albeit in a different platform. It's not. It's a whole paradigm shift. We've spoken to a lot of online learning companies on this show, and they talk about asymmetrical learning. Where students are to learn the syllabus at different speeds because they can't work on that lowest common denominator as you would in a classroom. You can actually see the teacher as a shepherd moving the flock and trying to keep an eye on the lowest common denominator and bring that individual up to join the flock. You can't really do that online learning. Is that something that you guys are aware of and you guys are trying to address it because school academic year is indeed opening up?
Well, we are very aware of it because, as a trained inspector myself as well, classroom differentiation, the ability to get across a classroom, Einstein in one corner and a little boy in the other that may have some, some particular learning difficulties, special needs. But in a classroom, it's a dynamic environment, so you're able to sort of socially interact, physically interact, and get around the classroom. And with experience, you can bring it all together. How do you do that when they're all in little boxes on a laptop? Google Meet or Zoom, whatever it might be. There's a limit to how you can reach them, and some of them are switching off, some of them are muting, and all the rest of it. So it has been a real challenge for us. And the follow-up outside of those online lessons, with some of the material that we can generate through Class Dojo or Edmodo or something, different classroom platforms like that, is very important to follow up so that the children feel that they have some sort of tangible reaction to doing a test or doing a piece of work and marking like that as well. So what you're doing just online isn't enough. There has to be follow-up, there has to be discussions with parents, there has to be meetings and class meetings as well online, as well as the straightforward tuition.
All right. We'll take a short break before we continue our conversation with Beaconhouse. Don't go anywhere. Thanks for staying on with us. We are still with Beaconhouse. Joining me is Alister, the Regional Director of Beaconhouse Southeast Asia. Let's talk a little bit about the regional aspect of Beaconhouse right now. As mentioned earlier, you are in several countries, but the predominant countries that I want to zoom in is, of course, the Philippines as well as Thailand. How are things different there compared to Malaysia, and are there any similarities with Malaysia in that respect?
Well, I've been in your country for many years, and it is my second home, and I think Malaysia's done very well, to be honest. I mean, look at my own country in the UK, it's a mess, and embarrassing and upsetting and so forth. But Malaysia's done, I think, very, very well with this awful virus that we're all
I think you have to go draconian in a bit, because that's the only way forward.
Well, it is, but they did it, although we saw army on the streets outside my own home, In the KLCC, we saw it all, but I think it was correct, and I think they did very well. Now, when you look at somewhere like the Philippines, where it is still, it's getting worse, the situation's getting worse, and you've got someone like President Duterte, who actually believes that schools should not open until there is a vaccine. Well, if that were to be the case, then we're looking at sometime next year, if we're lucky. So what we're seeing in our schools in the Philippines is a dire situation whereby parents have actually become, if you like, entrenched. They don't know what to do. They know they can't go back to school. The technology in the Philippines in terms of online provision is worse than here. People are finding it very difficult to access. Not impossible, but it's much more challenging. So we've had this sort of despair element coming through where our numbers are dropping further and further. Our heads are extremely diligent, wonderful people, doing a great job. And until about a month or so ago, I think the whole provision was sort of going reasonably well. Now, and this is my worry for Malaysia if there were to be any second spike, this element of have we really got to do it again? Are we really going to have to go back online? The energy levels, it would be dispiriting, it would be depressing. This is a little bit of what we're seeing in the Philippines. And I'll be honest with you, we don't have all of the answers. I've got a very big conference coming up tomorrow about our whole Philippines operation and how to help them and how to support it. I'm unable to travel there at the moment, which is a problem. All I can count on is the fact that in the Philippines, education is hugely important to people. They set very, very high standards for themselves. Our schools are wonderful, albeit modest. And I'm hoping that by offering all sorts of incentives and delayed payments and so on like that, that we can help the children, help the parents to stay with us in the longer term.
How does this change your bottom line? You are a for-profit organization after all.
Yes, we are. Yes.
Is it going to be troublesome?
Well, it has been. We were, I think, one of the first school groups in Malaysia to offer a 15% discount. And I'll be very honest with you, it wasn't enough. 50% would have been much better. I would have felt that 50% was quite reasonable. But I'll be very honest with you, I wouldn't be sitting here today and we wouldn't have any schools and teachers for our children to come back to, and they have come back, if I had done that. So it was, if you like, in many ways, a token gesture. It's been helpful to our running costs, but it hasn't solved our overall problem.
What about the situation in Thailand then?
The situation in Thailand has been better because Thailand has actually suffered less than we have here even. And there was a holiday period as well in Thailand, which ate up quite a bit of the pandemic time. So they're now in the process of going back, have been back now for a while. And I'm happy to report that a lot of the schools are functioning, I won't say almost normally, but they are doing well. And we have a big school population there. We have various levels where parents are very clearly able to afford what they've chosen to opt into. So our Thailand operation has not really been troubled too much at all. Thailand, fingers crossed, has done very well, and I hope they continue to do that.
One element that I want to ask you is, of course, the major examinations that were postponed for this year. This include the checkpoint year for year 9, even year 6. But of course, the big one, the Cambridge examinations. How have you guys coped following that announcement that this year there will be no examinations?
Well, we have both Northern Hemisphere international schools and Southern Hemisphere international schools. So we have those that do the September to July thing, Newlands.
Sorry, where are we at? We're on the equator, so I don't know whether we're
well,
southern.
Exactly. Well, it's all a matter of choice, isn't it? Depending on which audience that you're choosing to go with. But in our Newlands school, we run a September to July, which is effectively the standard British year time. And then we have Sri and I that runs a January to December year. So they're both doing IGCSEs, and as I've said, very soon, hopefully, we'll be doing A-levels too. So the examinations that they'll be taking at IGCSE in our Sri and I school, we still wait to hear what's going to happen. They should be taken in October. But of course, the examinations for the May-June examinations this year were, as you know, cancelled, and the aggregate scores and so on went through. There's been a lot of criticism about IB marking and stuff like that, as you've heard. So it isn't ideal.
My nephew's in IB, he's part of that cohort that is actually going through. Not him, my sister then, the parent. there's a lot of criticism coming along.
Well, there's a lot of upsets, but from people who are talking about the fact that it's all linked to algorithms, and whatever the school had done in the past has determined what these young people, the grades and points they've been scoring this time round. So inevitably, if that were to be true, and the jury's out, that would be very upsetting. That, you've gone through all of this and then you end up being part of an average score somewhere from some past data. So I think that's important. So has it had an impact? Of course it has. And of course the universities are now saying that next year, a lot of universities, certainly those in the UK, are saying they're going to be doing just online teaching next year. Personally, if I was a student, age 18, 19, going to university, I'd probably defer. It's not going to be any fun at all going on to university and have a virtual first year. But that's where we are. I mean, everybody's had to make a contingency plan. Everybody's got to try and plan for the future the best way they can. So I think it's upsetting. If I were a student going right the way through IGCSEs, A-levels or IB diploma, whatever it might be, you're bound to feel very let down, aren't you? That all of your goals, everything you were heading for, has at least been stalled, cancelled or stalled. And what does it mean? What effect will it have on your university choice? And we wait, of course, to have the overall results for IGCSE and what will the outcome be in terms of young people's achievements. It's a worry.
Even private universities are going through the same problems as you guys are. And that's why, do you feel that there is a moral obligation on institutions like yourselves to offer substantial discounts to parents, to at least to make sure that at least the parents are not burdened by the normally high school fees that they have to be incurred
Well, I do, because the vast majority of my career has been in non-profit education. So my first belief and my first responsibility is to young people, is to children. But of course, I've had to swallow that, those difficult times in terms of aligning to the profit market, and I think there's no problem with that as long as you can actually put your hand on your heart and say your product is good. At this moment in time, my biggest concern is that parents don't leave us, don't despair, and have a way in which they can pay. My message to parents has been very clear. Give us some sort of payment plan of any kind and we will be there for you. It wasn't a big enough discount, I'm sorry about that, but I wanted to safeguard the schools and the teachers' careers coming back. I wanted you to have a school to return to, and fingers crossed, we've got nearly 100% back in our schools. Some of our smaller schools are able to operate every day, other schools are on every other day, and so forth. But we are sort of operating fairly normally now, and I think we're going to be dealing with the after effects of what has happened, and fingers crossed no second spike. But we're going to be dealing with it for months to come. The rest of this year at least will see us hopefully dealing with parents who need delayed payments, and will have some support for that. The most important thing is the children. Can they stay? Will they stay? Mum and dad have faith.
Do you have serious considerations, at least amongst your board of governors or directors, to actually look at online learning as a permanent thing? Meaning that you are going to inculcate extracurricular activities at home, group work at home, everything, the whole full set. It's just that the premise is no longer at school, but at home. But not just the little boxes that you see on your screen.
I think we are very well prepared for that because we are a very big group. I mean, our mothership is in Pakistan, where they run a very impressive organization and is very much a market leader in Pakistan. Now, we've been able to draw down on resources, synchronous, asynchronous learning, all of these different things, with a lot of background material that we can draw down upon. I think we inevitably have to look at what I would describe as a hybrid learning environment moving forward. There will always be, I think from now on, an element of provision, contingency if you like, of online support. In the next couple of years, until we know exactly what the overall effects are going to be of this pandemic, we never know quite when we're going to have to go back to it. So our state of readiness, even though I've got my children back in school right now, our state of readiness in terms of what we're going to do, in terms of provision in the contingency, if there were to be schools delayed or cancelled again for a while, is very, very important, because we weren't ready in March. No one was. Globally, nobody was ready for this. But we've learnt a lot. Some of it's been, I think, salutary. For me as an educator, I've been humbled by the ways in which my teachers have supported and the way they've actually stepped up for this. All credit to them. It has not been easy at all, and I've seen a lot of it online. But we need to be better prepared, we need to have better resources, we need to have better technology. Let me give you an example. Some of my schools, and I put my hands up here, when we went online, I realized that when our teachers would come back in, we didn't have enough technology to actually give online lessons from every classroom with every teacher at the same time. And I challenge a lot of schools. You imagine you've got all of those teachers in their classrooms, the children at home, and you're having to have the wiring and the wireless all ready for all of those children to have their lessons at the same time. It's a challenge. The schools didn't really think about that.
Yes.
It would never be a usual situation.
And this is a problem that you've got to solve prompto.
Well,
right?
we are doing it
Yeah.
now, and our investment's
That's
been
crazy.
going on. You know, we're I think 2, 3, 4, 5 of our schools have now been completely rewired and new wireless points put in. So I think that we are ready now, more ready than we were. The rest will be online very, very soon. It wasn't we didn't have any, we didn't have enough. Because the power that was needed, you know, the levels that we needed just simply weren't there. And I think from that point of view, this has been a learning curve for us. Because the technology in schools, the sort of processes of online, if you like, we didn't see it coming, but they were always important. The technology in schools was always important. So the fact that our learning curve has been vertical over the last few months, it's been hard, but it's been necessary in some ways as well. So we'll always be better prepared than we were and should have been moving forward. So I feel confident about that. The most important thing with parents is transparency. We have tried to be very, very transparent with parents. You know, when people have come in and said, well, I'm not happy about this, I saw this today, do you know my child dropped out of a lesson today and everything? I just say, I'm sorry, I believe you. You know, I understand. And I've investigated each and every complaint, each and every statement or area of concern that people have had. But they've been there. But when you say to parents, look, we weren't expecting this, stay with us, I'll come back to you and give you a report on that, then I think there is a level of appreciation, you know, and that's why perhaps Beaconhouse has done better than some other schools groups. You know, we have had a lot of loyalty and we haven't lost too many children.
Fantastic. We have to end this conversation. That was Alister Bartholomew of Beaconhouse. If you've missed any part of this interview, just head on to astroawani.com, look for Notepad, plenty of interviews like this that you can find over there. You can also watch these kind of interviews on your mobile devices. Just download the Astro Awani app, wherever you get the application. Until next time, thanks very much for watching and goodbye.